Good evening, everyone. It's another Evening Huddle presented by Dunn Tire, the official tire dealer of Syracuse Athletics. I'm Matt Park. Great to have you along with us. About a month ago, we did one of these for our season ticket holders, and we thank you for joining us again tonight. We visited with the offensive and defensive coordinators of Orange football, and tonight we welcome in Syracuse head football coach Dino Babers. And Coach, good to see you.
Good to see you, Matt.
Everybody's starting to feel the enthusiasm of spring and summer, and football season certainly follows that. But first and foremost, good to see you literally. It's the first time we've been in the same room in more than a year and starting to come out of the shell of COVID, so all of that is very exciting.
You know, it's been such a unique year, and it's been so different than what you and I have expected. And, you know, we're used to spending a lot of time together during the week, especially during the season. But with all the stuff that's been going on, it's time to get back to some normalcy and hopefully some football and some fans in the stands.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll hit on a lot of that over the course of the night here as we get a sense of what is to come. We want to look back a little bit on what has been happening here in the football offices and give the fans a sense of the very latest. And, you know, how about starting just with that? We know that spring football practices have been over in terms of that schedule, but the football office never stops buzzing. What are your priorities and the things that are taking up your days right now as we speak here in the middle of May?
We're in the middle of two things. So obviously, you know, we are in the middle of recruiting the 2022 class and bringing them home, waiting for more early commits and finishing that class based off the scholarships that we have available. And then also, you know, we still have some stuff in our pocket where maybe we can add a person or two to our current roster that can help us with the 2021 season.
One thing that separates football from other sports, and there's several things, obviously, but in this whole new world that we're learning here with NIL, which we're going to talk about, no penalty transfer without sitting out, getting a year back after COVID, these are unprecedented tidal waves that are changing all of college sports. But in football specifically, you've got a cap on the number of people you can bring in a given year anyway, correct? So the idea of roster management and really making sure you've got numbers at the right spots and have your positions filled out is maybe more challenging than ever.
Yeah, it's right now it's not balanced, and we need to come to grips with that between the NC2A and the ACC and everybody else, that we have an output button where people can leave, but we don't have an input valve that are letting enough people in. And there needs to be a balance if you're going to keep teams locked at 85 maximum scholarship with the ability to only bring in 25 a year.
Sure. So you've been quiet during this spring period, as is your nature. I wondered what, you know, I've kind of viewed it as you're in the lab. You and your staff and your players have been doing your thing really behind closed doors here for the last several months since the season ended. What are the benefits of that, of just kind of closing ranks, and how do you think it all went?
You know, first of all, I think it was something that we really needed to do. There was so many things going on in 2021. It's just so many things, in 2020. And we needed to be able to focus on us, lock in on us. And when I say us, I mean there was techniques and fundamentals that we've been lacking for a year that we need to get back to. We've got young people with ACC game experience, but we didn't have necessarily young people with ACC techniques and fundamentals, which is going to take them that extra step. And we really wanted to spend 15 practices selfishly on us, making us better, minimizing the distractions as people say it, and really locking in on making Matt Park the best you or the best you could be, and try to get every individual better, which hopefully made the whole better.
You know, everybody knows how last season went. You got the early win against Georgia Tech, and that was it. You're talking about technique. How much can you work on technique during the year? And another way to say it is, if things are rolling in an adverse way over the course of the season, how hard is it? Are you unable to get that headed in the right direction during the season?
You know, it's like a batting stance in baseball. You want to start a good stance, and you start off the season with this new stance, and you really want to work the heck out of it. And normally, if you're up there long enough, there's going to be some uncomfortability about it, but eventually you're going to sink in with it, and you're going to feel good about it. You know, we were rolling so many people in and out of our roster for the most part that someone might start to feel good, and after 3 or 4 weeks, they went down, then the next person went down. Or you had just young people playing regardless of what they batted. You know, they're batting 196, but they get to stay in because there's no one else behind them. And there's negatives of that. There's no doubt about it. I mean, some of it you could say is based off the record, but there's also positives about it. I mean, you got a lot of young people who played games in the ACC, and now we have to, that game experience has value. And now we got to take the techniques and fundamentals so we can get the full value of that out of that game experience.
I'm sure when we get to the fall, we're going to be talking a lot about the super senior concept, people that are back for their 5th, maybe a 6th year, because last year didn't count against anybody's eligibility. So for Syracuse, guys like Josh Black, Aaron Service, team leaders are back and in good standing in terms of their eligibility. They've got the full year. They could be in the pros if they chose, but they are back. So that's one thing, and we'll get to that. But as it relates to Syracuse, it's the other end of the spectrum where I think the real difference can be made. You've got freshmen who could have 0 experience right now under normal circumstances, 0. And not only do they have experience, they've got experience and 4 years of eligibility left to play in games. You know, maybe Garrett Williams and people like that shine and they move on, and that's a possibility. Yeah. I don't think it's a secret, Coach, that that's a possibility for him. But those types of people, maybe a better example would be the Rob Hannas, or the type of people that came in secondary positions, filled in for you, your 3rd, 4th, 5th linebackers, those types of people that maybe got special teams work. Maybe they were in ahead of schedule based on what you were talking about. But they had to do some productivity because somebody had to make the tackles or run the football in the case of Sean Tucker, and now they come back for another year, but with an off-season's tutelage. Is that what has you kind of the most excited about the roster?
When we were going through the difficulties that we were going through, we had options. We could have done some things which may not have been the ideal things to do, but we could have saved getting a whole bunch of mud on our face, so to speak. But that might have been the best thing for certain individuals, but it wouldn't have been the best thing for this football team. The best thing for this football team was to play and to find a way to get on the football field every week, which we did. Very few teams across the country when it came to COVID-19 handled that very well. And there's no doubt that not only this football team, the staff, and the athletic department, all the way up to the chancellor of the university, handled COVID-19 as well as anyone. We were out there 11 opportunities, and those individuals got better. I would love to see this on paper. I don't think there's a younger football team in the ACC than Syracuse University. I really don't believe that. And if the numbers prove it, then let's prove the numbers. Let's get the numbers and let's do it. We are so young, okay? Which means, hey, I've said it before, for every freshman you're playing out there in offense and defense is going to cost you a loss. I think we might have done a heck of a job because I know we were playing with more than 10. Now, that being said, that experience is going to pay off. It's going to pay off. When they play that young and they stay around, the team matures and they gets better. Now, what I'm trying to do is make it get better yesterday.
Sure.
Okay, so it's better today and not waiting around for tomorrow.
On defense, the numbers weren't on either side of the ball what you wanted a year ago. You're 112th in the country in total defense, but just continue to throw out some numbers. Syracuse will be among the leaders nationally this year in returning production, both sides of the ball. Offense and defense, you're bringing back close to everyone who did anything for you a year ago. The nugget that I threw out over the course of the season, because it was so astonishing, 40% of the tackles made by Syracuse last year were by freshman players, because sometimes you had a half dozen freshman starters in the lineup on defense. So nobody would sign for that in August. That certainly wasn't by design. And we'll get into recruiting as well. Obviously, you're trying to get better and better freshmen, but you don't expect freshmen necessarily to be impact players. That is a learning experience, and now they will be freshmen again, but with a great deal more experience than they otherwise would have had.
The biggest difference between a freshman and a senior, there's two really big differences. One is the maturity of the body. Okay, as men, we change. We're a little bit different at 18 and 19 than we are at 21, 22. And then the second thing is the experience. The experience. Now, the body thing is a nature thing, and God's going to have his way with it. But when you give young people the experience, they have They have the talent, they have the athletic ability. They may not have the natural strength. They may not have the total build based off the conference that they have to play in. But when you give them that game experience, they're going to get better. They're not going to stay the same. And that's the key to having an opportunity to play early. It may not look productive based off of what they did, but they take that knowledge, they take that experience to the weight room, they take it to the off season, and then hopefully you get a different product the next time they step on the field, and as you said, as freshmen again.
Does it create a different hunger? Are those guys better in the weight room because they played a little bit last year?
There's no doubt.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. When you've played in a game, when you think you're from high school and you're the top dog in your high school, and nobody's bigger, nobody's stronger, nobody's faster. And then you come to college and you get an opportunity to play in the ACC as a freshman, and you lay hands on a junior and a senior from Clemson, Florida State, okay? And then you realize you need to get back in the weight room because you're putting hands on somebody and he really doesn't feel you. And as an athlete and as a competitor, that's not fun. It sends you back to the weight room with a purpose, with a focus that really matures you beyond your years to make you get there right away.
You want to have an idea of how much talent there is on the Syracuse schedule, certainly mostly in conference coming this past year, but in and out of conference, count Notre Dame in there was a fairly regular opponent. Just look at the NFL draft, which again had a slew of players in each of the rounds, and that brings us to another of the topics I wanted to hit with you right off the top here, Coach. When we had the coordinators in here a month ago, it was coming right up on the draft, and we're talking about the hopefuls. Now we know. We know Andre Cisco is a Jacksonville Jaguar, first pick of the third round. We know Ife Melifonwu has gone to the Detroit Lions as a drafted player. What does that say? You've got a couple of players happen to be Northeast recruits in a way, although Cisco played his finished his high school career in Florida. When you think about the arc of the careers that they had here, what does it mean for what they did and the future of the program?
First of all, what they did was absolutely amazing. You know, I thought that Cisco came in and he acted like, you know, the big brother from the day he walked in. And I won't even bring up a name. There was a senior in front of him at his position. And he came in January, and within 4 weeks, you know, the guy was transferring. And he wasn't wrong. This guy was not going to be denied, and he did not act like a freshman, nor has he ever acted like a freshman. With Ife, he came in, he had a plan. Him and his mom and his brother had a plan. You know, he had to redshirt his freshman year. We're going out, I can still remember his freshman year. I thought he was the third best corner on the team with an opportunity to play a lot. And we already made the promise that we were going to redshirt him, and we fulfilled our promise to that mom. And knowing that he probably wasn't going to get to his senior year based off of what we saw as a freshman, we were absolutely correct. So I think that those guys kind of went where they were supposed to go. It's a big feather in the cap for East Coast recruiting. We can say what we want, but Cisco's a Northeast guy. Sure. Even though he went to IMG, they didn't recruit him down there.
Sure, he's from Long Island.
Yeah, he went there on his own, and they got lucky and we got lucky. And guess what? Jacksonville Jaguars, they just got lucky as well, along with the Detroit Lions. And we wish all those guys the best. Trill, our
Trill
punter.
Williams was originally signed by the Saints. Physical didn't work out. It's kind of the reverse Drew Brees, right? Drew Brees went to the Dolphins, and Nick Saban, physical didn't work out, and then he becomes a Hall of Famer with the Saints. Trill Williams didn't work out with the physical, and now the Dolphins gave him a shot. But Nolan Cooney has a legit chance to become the third Syracuse punter in the NFL.
There's no doubt about it. He definitely has the leg for it. Nolan and I have talked numerous times. I love him in my office. He is so mature, and God bless him and his family. And I think whether it's with the NFL or whether it's when he goes into his private business, this young man is going to be successful. There's no doubt about it. He'll be donating. He'll have a building, one of these buildings that have his name on it around here for sure.
All about that. He is a tremendous young man who himself has overcome some adversity and a good head on his shoulders and good stuff. I want to go back to Andre Cisco just briefly because we do have a money soundbite from Urban Meyer, who is, after great success in college football coaching, is venturing out into the NFL, and no coincidence that he's going into the NFL with the first overall pick. And Jacksonville was able to take Trevor Lawrence. Then to somewhat controversial standards, he took Travis Etienne to pair those two. So two guys that you're not going to have to face anymore, Coach, are with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Andre Cisco wound up there, and Urban Meyer and his staff were delighted.
Well, I'll tell you what, he's a guy that we just all fell in love with. Before that injury, I had Malik Hooker at Ohio State, and he's the best overlap player I thought in the draft. He used to call Reggie Nelson the eraser. You know, he makes a lot of things right. Best ball skills we felt in the back end of the draft, and a guy that we've had a couple incredible Zoom calls with him. Great background, great character, and if he wasn't injured, I think that was a value pick. So we're real pleased with that.
So as we mentioned, it was the first pick of the 3rd round to the Jaguars, and a couple of players that we're talking about here, Cisco being one of a freak injury in pregame warm-ups, so he was lost for the really last 3 quarters of the season. And even with all that, he's one of the all-time not only interceptors here, but was still the active interception leader in college football when the season ended. The ball skills are obvious. What's he talking about when he says overlap? And I know that has to do a little bit with playing center field out there and having a sense of the game and the IQ to be in the right spot for turnovers.
Overlap has to do with basically 2 things. It means that he can play the back end as a deep middle 1/3 player, which we've all seen him do and do it well. But it also means that he can push up and play, tackle and cover tight ends inside the box. And he has, Andre's always had the ability to catch the ball extremely well. But it's more than that. When you're a ball hawk guy, and that's basically what he is, he has the ability of seeing something on tape and bringing it to life on the football field. You know, it's the first snap of the quarter, and there goes that thing he saw on tape, and oh, this is not the route. He really likes to throw this route. He can lean on one and break on another. And when you can bait the quarterback into his reads, now you've got a ball hawk type player, and that's what Cisco does extremely well.
Isn't that one of the difference makers in what becomes a pro?
Yeah.
Right, there's one thing about athleticism. There's probably a lot of guys that didn't get drafted or still sitting home right now wondering why they didn't get drafted that are tremendous athletes or can run with the ball once it's in their hands. But the homework in the classroom and in the film study is a really important thing if you're going to play for Urban Meyer and in the NFL.
Well, if you're going to play for anybody in the NFL, there's only 2 types of guys in the NFL. You have, one starts with an F, it's called freak.
Right.
Okay, I think Lawrence Taylor was one of those,
Sure.
and I can bring out some other examples.
I might have been able to coach him.
You know, we all may have been able to. You know, some guys that are just freaky good. And then it's not that the other guys aren't athletic, they're just so tied in to football. You know, I talk about Marcus Allen, I grew up with Marcus Allen, just so locked into football, played quarterback, played safety, played fullback, played tailback, was a football player. Never got an opportunity to coach Marshall Faulk, but being around Marshall Faulk, he was like a quarterback. There's one more. Oh, there we go, almost. Larry Fitzgerald. Talking to Larry Fitzgerald at the University of Pittsburgh was like you were talking to a coach, and he saw tape like a coach, and that's how Cisco is. You need to have one of those 2 things if you're going to hang around a long time in the National Football League. Let me finish, because everyone loses a step. But if you've got the mind, the techniques, and the fundamentals to get that step back, you can hang around for 8, 9, or 10, 11 years. The freaks are gonna be there anyway, because God decided to make one, and neener, and you're not. So those freaks are gonna be there, but those other guys, those are the guys that really keep the league going.
So we're not here to talk about the NFL, and you are not shy about saying you don't really follow the NFL. You don't have NFL coaching aspirations, but that matters for Syracuse. Right, so there are players who want to be the next Andre Cisco that are either here or are in your recruiting pipeline.
Yeah.
What type of demonstration is he?
Cisco. To me, again, Cisco is that guy that he wasn't your 5-star, he wasn't your 4-star. He came in and he worked like heck. He put himself in a competitive situation at IMG where he was playing with some of the better players in high school.
Sure, if people don't know, IMG started in golf and tennis, but if you want to be a professional athlete, IMG's in Bradenton. There's a Syracuse connection there. That's a different kind of story, but that's where you go if you're kind of announcing your presence, like I'm a future NFL player when you go to when you leave Long Island to go play there.
And the competition that you play in practice and on the football field, if you survive that competition, that means you're one of the best of the best.
Jesse Edwards on the basketball team wasn't even on the varsity at IMG.
Right.
Just to give people an idea.
And he's good.
Yeah.
Real good. So that's kind of the atmosphere, and he went down there and he survived it. And, you know, I happened to have a guy that I worked with at Eastern Illinois on the staff, and we were recruiting some other guys down there as well, and he said, Coach, there's a guy that nobody knows about that I'm telling you is the key to this whole thing. He's one of the better guys on the defense. And the next name out of his mouth was Andre Cisco, and then the rest is history.
Former Syracuse assistant Bobby Acosta, a big role down there at IMG. So you head into the off season. How do you wrap up spring football in terms of not necessarily a grade, but are you pleased? Do you feel like you got done the work you wanted to do? And how much time does it take to kind of evaluate where you are?
You know, I do feel good about the work because some of that had to do with the circling the wagons, so to speak, and keeping the work inside and really locking in and focusing. There was work to be done. It was a physical spring, and I think the kids really embraced that. It was difficult, and we made it that way on purpose. Mm-hmm. And if you talk to the super seniors, and I wish you would, because they've been around the longest, they said it's the most physical spring they've ever been in, the most difficult spring they've ever been in. And it was really important to let everyone who wanted to stay to understand what the work ethic is and how much time you have to put in now if you want to make sure that you want to have success in the fall.
That group typically is here, trench players, offensive linemen like Aaron Service, defensive linemen like Josh Black and Bear Williams. I know you wanted to make improvements on the offensive defensive line anyway. So how helpful is it that these guys stick around and, as you say, now they are the 22 and 23-year-old players?
You know what? It was big. It's the key. It's the key to the season to give us a chance. We needed the big guys to stay around, and I'm really proud about how they rallied, and they all came to basically the same conclusion that they wanted another chance at this, and they wanted to not end on this note. You know, you're talking about some seniors that have gone through the Virginia Tech win, the Clemson win, the 10-3 season, the 5-7 disappointment, and the 1-10, and they just didn't want that on their resume. They wanted one more opportunity to write it, and I'm right there with them. Let's go.
Let's hit a couple of position groups. We did solicit questions from fans, and certainly the top position group, really the top two that you might imagine. People want to know, what is the reason that we can expect the offensive line is going to be better? And I know, given some of your other comments in this offseason, number one is the number of bodies.
You know what? True. Absolutely true. We have more people to work with. We have more people to get better. We got more people who we have an opportunity to choose from, so we can choose the best. We're healthy. I mean, we just got decimated at that position, and it really wasn't fair in some instances. But the way they rallied, the way they battled, I mean, to finish the season against Notre Dame and have two backs go over 100 yards, I don't care who's out there. I mean, you tell me the last time that happened, and you're talking about the Fighting Irish. And there were some positives at the end that were stuff that we can grow off of, but we got to make sure that everyone grows and that we're unselfish and we're playing for the S on the front of our shirt, not the name necessarily on the back.
So it has a ripple effect because you have regular bodies back. So Chris Elmore, who filled in at left guard last year, can move to more of his natural position, a fullback tight end type role. Chris Bleich, who going into the season there was some optimism that he might be able to play immediately as a transfer from Florida. He's about the only guy in all of college sports last year who did not get an immediate transfer waiver from one school to the next. So he's available for you this year. And then you have an offensive lineman transferring from Texas and Willie Tyler, who hasn't played a ton of football based on his travels, but that's two more bodies that have been recruited to a very high level. What does that give you in terms of an infusion of options and talent?
It gives us a lot of options. We get our offensive linemen back from injuries as well, and it puts us at a situation where we're twice as We have twice as many numbers as we had last year to choose from. And that's with us moving Chris Elmore, like you said, back to his natural positions. The other thing is we have more offensive linemen coming in this class than we've ever had before. The chances of an offensive lineman playing as a freshman is not very good. I mean, they have to have exceptional strength, okay, to be able to pull that off. But with the new NC2A rule where freshmen can play 4 games, you know, maybe if you put somebody out there and they play 4 games and you go, wait a minute, this guy has got something, we need to roll with it, then maybe you get an opportunity where you can keep a guy playing as a true freshman. But making sure, or trying very hard to make sure those guys get some experience, those 5 offensive linemen, before they go into the oven for a year and they come out as redshirt freshmen next year to be the bridge to the senior class that's leaving is very, very important.
That's a rule, the 4-game rule, that you tend to forget because it was only put in relatively recently. That's the year you won 10 games, and we'll touch on one of the reasons that we remember that in a second. But then last year it didn't count for anybody, so people played 8, 10, 12 games a year ago. They get all of that back. A couple of the players that you use that 4-game rule with shine for you in the bowl game. Abdul Adams is one there. And I know that he hasn't, you know, kind of been around in the way that he wanted. He chose to opt out from last year, as did Jarvian Howard. There's 2 guys now who come back and give you strength at a position where you really needed it at running back. Sean Tucker had filled in admirably as a freshman, moving up the depth chart quite a bit there in one fell swoop. So what do you see there in that group? And do you view it as that you'll be using 3, 4, 5 different players?
You know, Cooper Lutz, and I thought Cooper Lutz and Sean Tucker just did an amazing job.
They're the 2 that rushed for 100 at Notre Dame. As you mentioned.
And the main thing is that they were, you know, how do you ever down on the depth chart coming in? You know, things happen, and now they're pushed to the forefront. And it just goes to show you, you never know. You just don't know until you get it out there. Sean had an amazing year. He's very, very good. He's done very, very exciting things in spring ball. We expect big things out of him. Cooper Lutz, you know, he was a running back in high school. We moved him to wide receiver. And, you know, Cooper, don't get mad at me, but, you know, your hands are okay, you know. But from the minute this stuff started and I'm standing behind the offense and I'm watching him run, I'm going, there's something there. He sees something that normally guys don't see. Sean has it as well. But it was kind of like you didn't know that Cooper had it. And I think Cooper's really good. I think people look at him and they go, yeah. But if you just watch the production and watch what he does, I think those 2 guys are really good. We've seen what Jarvion can do. Obviously, he's played very early for us. You know, we're excited to have him back. And then, you know, Abdul was a guy who's played in the Big 12 and he's had big games before. And I'm just excited to see what those running backs can do behind a solid offensive line, and that's what we'll be starting off with in 2021.
Sure. Now everybody wants to know about quarterback, and at that position you have Tommy DeVito, who missed a lot of the end of last year due to injury. He's back and available to you to practice. And Garrett Schrader is an incoming transfer, in his case from Mississippi State. There are others, but let's start with those 2. How do you evaluate the springs that they have?
You know what? I'm going to start this way. I think we've got, overall, our top 5 is really, really good. Between Dylan and Jacobian and Justin, those guys are good. Again, Jacobian got reps, and he did some things out there like, wow. I mean, for a freshman that hasn't redshirted yet, whoa. And Dylan didn't get as many opportunities. Justin has done some things that are unique in spring ball and some things that are very predictable, you know, for a guy that's supposed to be getting ready to go to his prom in Disneyland that just got here. Now, I think that Garrett had a spring where he's got to learn the offense and he's got to get better at things, but he's gobbling that up daily and getting better and better, and his legs are something to be reckoned with. And then I think Tommy had a really, really good spring throwing the football. There's no doubt about it. I mean, those guys at practice can see what he can do when he has time and his feet are quiet. So I think we've got some options. I think we've got some players. They need to continue to grow this summer. And then there's going to be some awesome competition in the fall to see how this thing all settles out.
What are the players able to do now? And the reason I ask that question in this particular context is We're just about to go into the summer. School's wrapping up. COVID restrictions are lessening. You can grab a ball or 6 or 7 or 8 and a few receivers and some tight ends and go throw it around, right? And learn what it is that you're trying to do. Is that on the table for those guys here in the next few months?
There's no doubt about it. This summer, the summer that we didn't have last year is the summer that we have to have this year. And they have to get out. They have to throw the ball. They have to spend time together. The NC2A's made a rule where some of these guys don't have to, the super seniors don't have to take classes, and yet we still have the ability to pay for them to be here, to be in their apartments, to get them food, and for them to get ready for their super senior year, which is very gracious of the NC2A the way the rules have worked out. But we have to get together. We have to gel. We can't pick up from where spring ball left off. We have to grow during the summer so we can be somewhere else when camp starts in August.
Really had that sense last year that you just didn't get rooted, right? Yes, COVID affected everybody. Not everybody had 2 new coordinators.
Right.
You did. This year, those coordinators who both sat in that same chair when we last did this for Dunn Tire a few weeks ago and said that wasn't representative of what we were trying to do. How much better can they be, and why do you think that?
They're already better. And the reason I think that is because they have knowledge on their personnel. Having someone else say so-and-so can do this and so-and-so can do that and they don't do this well, blah, 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 is a lot different than you as a teacher, as an instructor, seeing it yourself and you go, okay, that's where that weakness is. We got to help on his reading. Or you know what? He's good in reading. We got to help with his math. When you can see that, you know exactly what to go to make that student sharper. I think that's what both of those coordinators were talking about, sitting in this chair. And also, you know, along with the rest of the staff and myself as well, being able to see where the coordinators are going with certain things and go, hey, you know what? I see what you're trying to do this, but it's a little bit too much because I think we can get it done right here and be a lot more simple. Or vice versa, where it's like you're being, you know, you're not giving these guys enough credit. They can go the next step with this. Let's take this to the next step and make it a little bit more complicated because it'll give us a hell of an advantage going down the road.
I know you're somebody who believes in change. You're going to assess your team and your staff every year, and unless things went super great, you're going to look for change to impact the results. And even when they do go super great, change happens to you, right? Because staff opportunities and players moving on. You had to do some other sort of subtle changes to your staff. You have a new offensive line coach in Mike Schmidt, some other kind of components there. How do you feel about all that?
You know, I feel good. I really enjoyed what happened in the spring. You know, sometimes when young men hear something from the same person over and over, they may hear it, but they're really not listening. And I think when you got the new voice in the offensive line with Coach Schmidt, and even Tony's voice is still new on defense, I think that they listen more. And if they listen, they're going to retain. And if they retain, they have an opportunity to bring it back up and use it. And that's what the advantage of knowledge is. It has no knowledge without using that knowledge is no knowledge at all. We want these kids to be able to take that information, transfer it to the field, and make it be productive, not only in special plays, but in special wins.
Sure. As we work our way through this off-season, hit on one thing that we just touched on a moment ago, and that's sort of the player-led type workouts. One of the questions we got on social media was, how important is it to have your starting quarterback identified? You haven't said that publicly. We don't know if you've said that in a room. Certainly certain people got reps and whatever in your spring scrimmages. Do the players have an idea of who the starting quarterback is, and does that matter?
You know, I thought last year we had a lot of injuries. Cisco was obviously one of those leaders that had that mishap before the game, and all of a sudden he was out. And you started looking around on what was going offensively and defensively, DeVito getting hurt. Sometimes when you identify that this is our leader and this is our bell cow, and those guys go down, sometimes the seasons go down with it. And one thing that we're looking for this year is more leaders. Okay, there's quiet leaders, there's vocal leaders, there's leaders on the field, there's leaders in the locker room. Sometimes the voices that are leading the football team are not necessarily starters. I can think of some leaders off that 10-3 team that people would say, you got to be kidding me, he was a leader. Yeah, he was one of the leaders, and when It really had push comes to shove. He was the guy that was going to stand up, and guess what? Nobody was going to shove. And you'd be surprised by some of those names. So we're looking for a lot of leaders out here, so that if some do stumble and fall, that somebody else can pick up the flag so we can keep moving.
There's that relatively recent football vernacular, QB1. Who's QB1? Well, you can have that, but you could also have RB1 and DB1 and CB1, and right? You can have a lot of different things, especially at this level. You're trying to impact various position groups, various classes, various recruiting groups, right? That if you got 100 guys in that locker room, you're going to need more than one guy.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I'll share something with you. We turned our mat drills into a very competitive thing once we came back on campus, and we sat in this room and we pulled out certain leaders that we felt were leaders, some that you guys may not have thought are leaders on the team, and we had them draft our football team, just like the NFL, in front of everybody, in front of everybody. And you talk about it, it reminded me, okay, analogy time. It reminded me when I was a little boy, and we played all three sports all year round. And, you know, football season, you know, I might be a first-round draft pick in the football season. Then basketball season, you know, I might be a third. And then baseball comes, and I might be the last pick. But you still took a lot of pride in what the other kids thought you could do or what you were capable of doing. And when you stand in front of your family and you start getting drafted and you don't go in the first round or the second round or the third round, there's like 7 guys up here. So there's like 7 picks in the 7th round. You start, you know, some guys walk down those steps right down here, had some very colorful words for everyone else.
We watch the NFL NBA draft, and you feel uncomfortable for the guy who gets passed over and is in the green room. And to do it right here, as you say, with the brethren and the Ohana and that whole group, that's really interesting.
We call that putting a light on it.
Sure.
Just so we put some high beams on some things, and that doesn't mean that's what you were, but that's how people perceived you. Now you go out and show us during these workouts what you are, and I think that radiated throughout the entire team.
All right, I've got a couple specifics to hit on as we kind of start looking ahead to the season, but I'll hit you with just one in general. And the audience here is season ticket holders, okay? And we thank everybody for being with us. We've got a couple of notes about your season ticket holdership to share with you here in a moment. What would you say to that group, Coach? They didn't get to come to games last year. The team went 1-10. What's your pitch to get some enthusiasm going for the fall?
First of all, we need them desperately. And this is, how do I say this? This is not about revenue. This is about Ohana. This is about family. We do not have we don't have that 12th man without our fans being in the stands. We need them to be able to accomplish what we did. We don't beat Clemson without the fans, okay? We need them. We don't go 10-3 and undefeated at home without our fans in those 2 big games against North Carolina and NC State, where we're scoring points and they're scoring points and they're making noise and their offenses can't communicate. We need them in the dome. And it was disappointing and just unfamiliar to be playing in the dome without them, and we need them back. And for us to be what we want to be, we need them to be a part of it.
So the Dome has had a massive overhaul since fans were last in there on a regular basis. Yes, there have been a few here for lacrosse games in the spring, but when they come in, Coach, September 11th, to me, really fitting. This will be a great thing to look forward to, is this opening game fittingly against Rutgers, and we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But with the video board, with kind of the enhancements that fans will recognize as they come in. I know the football coach wants it to be hot and sweaty and gross for the opponent. For everybody else, there's some pretty exciting stuff there. What would you tell them about what they're getting into?
When I walked in the first time when it was done, and I'm not a big ooh and ah guy. I've seen some stuff.
Right.
And literally my jaw was on the ground. I mean, it is something that you look at and you go, mom in a mirror, okay? Check it out and see where it pops up when you put mom in a mirror. And it was just a big wow. It is really, really impressive. And you're right. I don't like it being cool and nice and comfortable, but that's what it is in there now. And no one should get tired of cheering, and you don't have to worry about the deodorant running out. There's enough air conditioning for everybody. But it is a beautiful, beautiful venue, and something they should be very, very proud of, and something that they should be excited about coming to and trying to enforce their will on the other team by making sure that the home team comes out as the victor.
I see you, it's a project for you, like you need another one. You could have your team, and you got to have an engineering major on the team somewhere, and there's sport management majors. You could create the first ever like zone controlled heating, like in a building like that, where it's comfortable for everybody else, but from the visiting sideline out over the field, it can be the old sweatbox.
You know what? I would love to be able to put that zone right around the opposing quarterback.
Yeah.
And with the 3-3-5, make it a doggone heat zone. Put a triangle back there. Make it a square. You want a circle, whatever you want to do, but just make it really hot inside that bad boy, and just make those DBs and linebackers come from everywhere, and let's just see how the armor holds up when it gets hit from all different directions, sometimes at the same time.
Yeah, well, that's going to be Josh Black's job and Barry Williams' job and your linebackers, and that's what they'll be practicing come the fall. Speaking of season ticket holders, you may be aware that the renewal deadline has passed. There's a little bit of a grace period there, but get your stuff in fast. Get your renewals taken care of, because they will start releasing those seats, and we understand, obviously, and hope that it will only continue, that all of the COVID restrictions are being relaxed. Coach, we're talking about, everything's gearing toward full capacity and certainly the opportunity to pack the place, so there will be, in time here, some individual tickets and that stuff on the loose. But for the season ticket holders, they're the ones that can make the impact. We're certain, as we can be at this stage, that everybody that has a season ticket will get in the building with whatever restrictions, if there are any, at that point.
We need to get them back in the seats. If we're having the New York Fair, okay, we're going to have fans in the stands, and we need a full house, and everybody needs to embrace this place and make it what it is, which is one of the best home field advantages in college football. And we'll do our part. We'll do better. We'll do a lot better. But we really need them there, especially in that first game, to get this thing kicked off the right way versus our New Jersey friends.
Yeah, I think the schedule, and it's always interesting, okay, there's 7 games on the home schedule for this coming season. To me, renewing the series with Rutgers in that particular way on the 20th anniversary of 9/11, to me is incredible, and can't wait to see all the stops pulled out for that to be a game. Syracuse and Rutgers should play on a regular basis. Can be the first game, last game, whatever, but it'll be neat to see Greg Schiano on the other sideline and those types of things. They were able to, the Big Ten, we sat at the start of the year, didn't look like maybe they were going to get into anything, and they did end up having a season. Albany, to me, is an unusual one. You're going to play an FCS level opponent, but speaking of unprecedented, you've got an opponent now who has not only had a spring football, but has had 5 spring games. How do you deal with that? I know you're already, I'm sure you're scouting Ohio and getting ready for this first quarter of the season, Ohio, Rutgers, and Albany. What do you make of a team that's going to have that kind of buildup?
It's almost like by them having their own spring season, they're going to come in ready. And everybody's like, oh, he's just saying that, but think about this. Now, they had 5 real games. The only disadvantage is if you got someone hurt that's not going to be available to you early, or someone that's going to start playing later on in the season because they have an injury coming from the spring. If they're completely healthy, it is an advantage, and they're back in the weight room, I'm sure, getting bigger and stronger, and they're going to be a lot warmed up and ready to go coming out of the gate, no doubt. All those teams that played in the spring, it's going to be a little bit different early until the other teams catch up.
Other home games next year on the schedule in the fall are, Wake, BC, Pittsburgh, always these swing games. How you do in those games has a lot to say about the type of season you're going to have. And then Clemson. So for season ticket holders, you want to see, a national title contender up close and personal. Getting a season ticket is your best way to lock you in for that. And Coach, you have not been friendly hosts to Clemson historically here of recent, and they're not going to have Trevor Lawrence at quarterback. They're not going to be hurting, okay, but they don't have Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne.
They're a fantastic program. Obviously, they're one of those teams that traditionally are there all the time, and they have outstanding personnel, and they do a great job coaching. And Dabo will have those guys ready to go. I do believe we get them on a Friday, if my memory is correct, and for some reason, the orange on the Friday is nothing to juice about.
Yeah, it's worked out all right Friday night here on campus. All right, Coach, we had a few questions that were submitted in various ways by fans, and we appreciate everybody who chimed in. Some we were going to ask anyway, and some we've kind of massaged or tweaked. But I want to throw out a couple. These first couple we'll get into are kind of in the category of the business of college football. Being the head coach, you know, you've been at it a long time, 35 years, and you draw up plays, and you've coached and played a lot of different positions, and as you know, once you become head coach, you don't draw up as many plays anymore and deal with that, but you deal with some of these types of things. The transfer portal, all right, so Dave writes in and asked about, and we've mentioned some, we didn't mention the ones that are going, but you had a few that departed to other schools. You have incoming transfers as well. So Dave's question, Coach, what has the transfer portal meant to Syracuse, and does it impact how you recruit?
First of all, I'm not sure it means as much as what everyone thinks it should mean. Certain schools are going to use the transfer portal as a University of Alabama got a starting linebacker from the University of Tennessee to leave the University of Tennessee in conference and go play for the University of Alabama. Okay,
It's good to see them catch a break.
Watch this. Well, think about this. Think about Andre Sisco, Trill Williams, and Iffy not going pro, all coming back for their senior years, all going through spring and taking every rep, and it could be the best secondary that Syracuse ever had. And on July 1st, they could go to Alabama, Florida, and USC. And watch this. They took every rep in spring, which hurts the football team, and you don't get an opportunity to replace them because you don't have initials. That's where college football's just gone. We have, as college football coaches, we have less control over our numbers than any other time that we've been in this business. And for a CEO or someone who's running a company, it's spooky times.
All right, what if I said that any school, and maybe Syracuse could opt to do this or not, any school could shift its focus on recruiting from 17-year-old high school juniors to 20-year-olds that have played a year or two of college football at a different institution? How much appetite do you have for that?
I would say this. You better know what you're getting into when you take someone out of the portal. Because what you're getting is a person that says, I don't like what's going on here, and I'm going to go somewhere else. Normally, I shouldn't even say normally, if you're recruiting a quarterback, normally one quarterback can play, or you're kind of slotted, who's up, who's next. That position kind of sorts itself out. But those other positions, numerous guys can play. And when you get an individual that says, I can't do it here, I'm going somewhere else, unless he has outstanding personnel in front of him, you really wonder about the competition part of it, whether he's running towards the competition or running away from the competition, because that's a big part in what type of football player you want on your team.
All right, the other one, again, from the business of college sports, people hear the buzz phrase, the acronym NIL, name, image, and likeness. Going forward, college athletes are going to have the ability to market their own brand, their own name, and there's various complications and benefits that are associated with that. Mike asks, would love to hear your thoughts on NIL being advanced in some states. So a lot of the southern states, Georgia, Florida come to mind, and those are states, by the way, that have ACC teams that you play. Has this era of free agency changed the type of player you recruit?
I don't know if it changed the type of player, but I do think that there's certain states that almost are working hand in hand with athletics to give their region a huge advantage over prospects across the United States. I've never been, the last 2 years of college football, I've never been so closely tied to mayors and governors and the politics of things as it has the last 2 years. I never thought that we would be tied.
Largely that was because of COVID, but now this, yeah.
Absolutely. So between name, image, and likeness and the things that are going on with Congress and legislation and all that other kind of stuff, the House of Representatives, It's playing into all that stuff. And all that stuff's going to matter whether they're getting commercials and blah, blah, blahs and blah, blah, blahs, or they have a deal at a certain school for name, image, and likeness, and then after a year and a half, 2 years, they want a different deal.
Sure.
And now they go to another place and they get a different deal. And it's going to be within the rules, so it's not a matter whether you like it or don't like it. The rules are the rules. You play the game. But I just think that you need to make sure you're recruiting the type of player that has the same values that you want to represent not only your university, but your family or your football team.
All right, we'll finish on recruiting in general because NIL will come into play, obviously. I know there's the types of conversations that you're having. With that, what's just kind of the last word on state of recruiting right now as you view it and what you're seeing out there?
Some of it is very clear. Obviously, we want to recruit young people. We're recruiting the 2022 class. We're trying to get early commits and move towards that. Also, you have the transfer portal that you look at to see if you want older people. I think that we're going to have to do something about the initials. You have to do something about signing 25 freshmen in a class, and then the ACC average losing 11 people out of their senior class. So you sign 25, you keep 14, 11 go into the portal. Well, you're down 11. You know, you're from 85, you're at 74, and how do you make that up? You either make that up with extra scholarships or you make it up with extra initials, and somewhere the input has to match the output so that you can keep 85 on your football team, which is really big for health and safety reasons.
All right, we didn't get a chance to talk movies tonight, but I'm visualizing the beautiful mind and the numbers flying around, and I know that's
like
that's what you're working on. Coach, thanks for the time. I know it's scarce at this time of year. You're running around, and you got a lot ahead of you, but we appreciate the candor and the opportunity to visit. Looking forward to what's to come. Okay, we'll talk to you in the fall, if not before.
Matt, great talking to you.
That's Orange head football coach Dino Babers. Year 6 for him is coming up in the fall. The Orange do open on the road September 4th at Ohio, but home, as we mentioned, September 11th. Everybody's chance to get in the dome for real. COVID hopefully will be behind us. Football ahead, the Orange and Rutgers on that day. For those of you that are season ticket holders, we thank you for your patronage and your loyalty. We hope you'll get your paperwork taken care of for what's to come. Bring a friend, spread the word, get things headed here through the summer and into the fall, get some positive vibes. And as Coach said, he's looking for you to be the 12th man. The next one of these evening huddles brought to us by Dunn Tire will be in early June, Wednesday, June 9th. We'll visit with Dion Maddox, former Orangeman, a wide receiver who has come back on Coach Babers' staff to work in recruiting, and Director of Athletics John Wildhack, with certainly no shortage of topics to cover there. We thank Dunn Tire, the official tire provider of Syracuse Athletics. We thank everybody on our crew. We thank you for watching. For Coach Babers, I'm Matt Park. Thanks for joining us.